was on some op shit. I was cruising down a nigga block with the chopstick. Rockstar nigga, nah, I need a rock bitch. He want beef, not Fizzy's not squat. That boy like to talk. We popped out with mom. Gon' shoot a little, we gon' shoot a lot. I rock out with the drop, bitch, I rock very hard. She thought it was my cock, but my clock very hard. School was very hard, bitch, I'm very hard. Take it very hard, take it fairly hard. Chop it with a blade, cause my bitch gone. 1911 mall, leave you with a scar. My mama so hard, my daddy go hard. Take it fairly hard, take it very hard. This nigga is my wand, take it fairly hard. Chop it with a blade, it's gon' rip you apart.
How's it going, guys, and welcome to another build video, this one on a build utilizing the Golden Rule class mod for Amara, which I have currently been calling Golden Shower Amara. However, I'm sure that will change as I do need a name that I can actually put in the title. But this is a build that, again, uses the Golden Rule class mod, and functions very similarly to a sort of more general Amara build. However, more than just showcasing a build, I want to explain why I'm using the Golden Rule, and I want to showcase how it can actually be stronger than the Phasecasts in many situations. But what are the actual strengths of this build specifically? Well, the biggest strength is definitely the mobbing. Outside of like a Ties That Bind build, honestly probably being one of the strongest builds that I've used for mobbing with Amara, with really good survivability, damage, and action still spam, allowing it to keep up even in the toughest mobbing sections. But even bosses where you can't really proc Remnant easily, this build will still be able to handle quite well. Because of how we are spec'd as well, this does actually end up giving you quite a bit of damage into Phasecast, meaning that you will be able to tear through some mobs with just your action still, meaning it's kind of a bit of an action still done damage hybrid build. But now let's get into what makes this build actually function. So as I said, this build of course uses the Golden Rule, but why? The passive for the Golden Rule is simply whenever an enemy damages Amara, she gains increased action still cooldown rate for a few seconds, with this effect stacking. This is very nice, as cooldown rate is a very important stat for Amara, and the Golden Rule can provide a hell of a lot of this. But how does this make it potentially better than the Phasecasts, and how does it make it worth using at all? Well, it doesn't. This is completely bonus to the fact that this can roll +3 into Laid Bare. Laid Bare is a skill which increases the damage that enemies take from all sources for 8 seconds after being damaged by Amara's action skill. Usually this only goes up to a 25% damage increase, but when you roll an extra 3 into it, it goes up to 50%. But again, this doesn't sound like that much. But Laid Bare is an almost entirely multiplicative damage bonus. Laid Bare is only additive with Harmageddon. So that means in the formula, this is pretty much just giving you 1.5 times your damage, which is pretty crazy, which as I'll showcase a little bit later in this video, Amara has a lot of access to different multipliers and many different multiplicative bonuses within her trees. And Laid Bare is a single skill which will multiply all of those damage bonuses. But having a fuck ton of multipliers doesn't really do anything if you don't have a good number to multiply. And again, while she does have a lot of smaller multipliers, where's that big one? Well, that's where we come to our second core part of this build. We are using Phasecast 250, which 250% is a pretty fucking decent bit of weapon damage, and is a very nice core to slap all of these multipliers on and to get the most out of the Golden Rule and Laid Bare. This anointment is fucking strong. This is 250% weapon damage, which is just pretty much constantly active. And that's why I believe that the Golden Rule is better than, or at least provides higher potential than the Phasecasts does. Simply because if you were to use this anointment with the Phasecasts, you're not getting nearly as much out of it because the Phasecasts is just weapon damage. Of course, this means that builds that aren't using Phasecast 250 or Phase Slam 300 would prefer to get their gun damage from their class mod like the Phasecasts or the Driver, but when using these anointments, the Golden Rule and Laid Bare can really push them to their limits. Now, that's about the core of the build, but while we're here, let's talk about the rest of the gear. The general idea is that you want to use splash damage weapons that deal elemental damage as well. So things like the Chaosin, the Unkempt Herald, the Rowan's Call, Gibbsworth, Flipper, Soul Render, all of these things are incredibly good weapons to use, and of course you're going to be using Phasecast 250 on all of them. For our shield, we're going to be spamming our action still a lot, so we do just use an Ashbreak Revolter to constantly be getting that shock damage and fire rate, but depending on the weapons that you choose to use, the Infernal Wish can also be a very solid option. Unfortunately, because of the way that the self-damage from the Infernal Wish works, it doesn't actually stack the Golden Rule, but because we do get points into helping hands with the golden rule, and because we do just put some points in there as is, we really aren't taking all that much damage, especially from dot effects. So the Infernal Wish's self-damage really isn't that big of a deal, and you can utilize it quite effectively even with faster fire rates. The Infernal Wish is of course also very important to bossing with this build, as with enemies that just have a single health type, using an Infernal Wish will outdamage just using a Revolter. Along with that, things like the Plague Bearer that have unlisted projectiles benefit really heavily from the Infernal Wish, as it will duplicate all of those projectiles. For our grenade, I pretty much only use the It's Piss, as this is another really nice multiplier to have, and just with how maximized our damage formula is with this build, the It's Piss slots in incredibly well. I do use a level 1 version just because it doesn't kill you. You don't necessarily need to go through the effort of trying to get a level 1, as it can be a bit of a task, although there are methods out there to do it. But the anointment that we use on these is ASE bonus elements. I have a few different ones just for different use cases, but you can also use on grenade throw, but after doing some testing, I did determine that the bonus element is slightly better, and it does also just help you with element matching. However, if you do decide that you just prefer on grenade throw and maybe want more damage out of your action still, it is still an option. And then for a relic, we use the Pearl of Ineffable Knowledge. This is of course just a classically strong relic, however it is also very nice for this build, as the stacking damage is actually multiplicative, meaning that we can get a 16.1% additional multiplier, which if I'm not mistaken is also a completely separate multiplier, so that's not additive with anything as well. But when you reach max stacks, you get 90% bonus done damage, which is additive with our 250% from Phasecast, but this is just another massive bonus. I mean, 90% is just a big number, and that does make all of our multipliers even more effective. The passives that you're looking for with this is fire rate and mag size. The other relic you'd want to carry around with you is of course a toboggan for bossing. Using this, of course, with a Kick Charger, Bankburner, Plague Bearer, we'll be able to take care of many different bosses, with the passives that you're generally looking for on the toboggan being area of effect damage, heavy weapon damage, and some sort of elemental damage. The passives that you generally want on your golden rule are just kind of the sort of things you'd always go for. Weapon damage is pretty good, but honestly probably the weakest of just raw damage passives. You'd probably rather have something like specific weapon type damages like heavy weapon or pistol damage. Fire rate, action still damage, or action still cooldown rate can also all be nice, but honestly the passives are kind of just a bonus on the golden rule. The big thing that you want is that +3 into laid bare, and then ideally maybe a +2 into helping hands. For action still, we grab reverberation. I prefer reverberation just because it can hit for some very high numbers when it starts passing through a group of enemies, which is definitely very nice. However, if you just want to spread laid bare as much as possible, you can also use deliverance instead, as the orbs from deliverance can spread it a little bit further. But what also spreads laid bare is the use of revelation, as this does count as damage dealt from your action still, which of course will apply laid bare. So you can actually apply laid bare to quite a few enemies with just one go. So moving to our still trees and starting with blue, of course we grab Do Harm, as this is just the best tier 1 still here. Still damage is very good, just not only because Amara's action stills can deal a lot of damage themselves, but because there's a lot of other things that Amara is able to do that will stale off of action still damage. We then just put 1 point to Violent Tapestry to move down the tree, but Violent Tapestry is a nice one to pick up, as it is one of the best stills for just generating rush. Then we come to Transcend, which is a critical hit damage bonus. This of course being a multiplicative damage bonus, which again stacks onto our high amounts of gun damage very nicely. Keep in mind with Transcend that while it doesn't say it here, this will actually stack, meaning that with Avatar, casting your action still twice will give you 54% critical hit damage and 76% accuracy. Then of course we grab Laid Bare down here, Wrath for just some more gun damage, Awakening to increase the effectiveness of our rush stacks, but really these points could go somewhere else. I like having them here just because I do like dealing a lot of damage with my action still. And then we grab Avatar for just a little bit of more action still spam and bonus rush stacks. And then of course a point into Remnant just because Remnant's a fucking batshit broken still. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll be able to take care of any sort of tough boss. There is nothing in this game that can withstand a Remnant orb, especially when you have a 50% multiplier on it from Laid Bare, which of course I'm sure it goes without saying, you definitely want to activate Laid Bare on any boss that you're attempting to fight. Now coming to our second biggest tree with the red tree, this is also just a pretty standard red tree. Infusion just because it's a nice still and provides a little bit more elemental coverage. Steady Hands, while not great, it is just kind of the best place to put these points to move further down the tree. Tempest definitely being one of the big pickups here, being elemental damage. Again, just more bonuses to varying parts of the formula. And the stills here on the right side of the tree, Wildfire, Catharsis, and Conflux, these points can be distributed very differently. All of these stills are kind of just taken as places to dump points to move down the trees and be because they're kind of useful for spreading dots around, which can be kind of nice as it interacts well with the Guardian rank perk Armageddon. But aside from that, none of these really do a whole lot, and you can decide on the point distribution however you would like. Deep Well for some mag size, as we are using mostly elemental guns when we can. Indiscriminate, which is just a crazy busted still, and is very strong for any sort of Amara build. If you'd like a more in-depth explanation on exactly how Indiscriminate works and why it's so broken, I covered it fully in depth as a part of one of my videos for my Ultimate Amara Guide series. There will be a link in the description down below and also popping up in the right-hand corner of the screen now, but this will double dip a lot of our bonuses, which again just kind of makes our damage formula even more efficient. Then we put 1 point into sustainment. You only need 1 point here, as at the end game you will be dealing so much damage that 4% is more than enough to keep you full, and Forceful Expression just to get a little extra bonus elemental damage. And under our green tree, the big pickup here is Personal Space, which gives you up to 54% bonus damage depending on how close you are to your target. And once again, this is another multiplier for that gun damage that we've got, as Personal Space is V2 damage. This is definitely very important and will help you a hell of a lot, especially when it comes to bossing. The general idea with that is slap on a toboggan and slide as close as you can to your target before shooting them in the face with a rocket launcher. That should take care of most bosses, especially when you take into account hitting a crit with that Transcend on top of Laid Bare and everything else that we've got bonuses into. Now these 2 points into Clarity, I prefer putting them into Clarity, as it's just nice to have this alongside the Lifesteal, because Lifesteal doesn't have a 100% uptime. If you have to reload or something, your Lifesteal ain't gonna do much for you. Clarity can definitely help out with that, but if you would prefer to just have the extra max health, which can also be good, you could put those here as well. Now, what is a bit of an odd choice, and usually something I'm vehemently against, is putting points into Helping Hands or really just speccing into any sort of damage reduction. The problem with damage reduction is that it stacks like fucking shit. However, if you have a single source of damage reduction, and it's a pretty high source of damage reduction, then it's actually pretty effective. And at 5 points, this does give you 40% damage reduction, but if you can roll extra points into it with your class mod, you can get that up to almost 50%, which genuinely makes damage over time effects really not that deadly. And hell, even a lot of enemy fire can be negated pretty heavily by this, which does synergize quite well with the golden rule, as you do want to be taking damage as often as possible to be stacking your action still cooldown. So this is a rare case where I would actually recommend taking Helping Hands. And then finally, I have 3 points into Arms Deal, as these are kind of just our leftover points after the fact. You could put these into Samsara for up to 25% gun damage, but we do kind of have a hell of a lot of gun damage already, so really the best part of Samsara is that it's a little bit of gun damage combined with some really nice health regen, which can combo well with Clarity. I have actually used Samsara for a majority of my time using this build, but I did recently swap over to Arms Deal, as even though it's only 12% splash damage, I do believe that 12% splash damage probably slots into our formula a little bit better than 25% gun damage, just because of how much we already have. The only other splash damage that we could have access to is realistically from our class mod if you're lucky enough to roll it, as the Pearl cannot roll with splash damage, which is the main artifact that we use, but we also get splash damage from the 5 points we have into Purple in Heavy Rain. Now the projectile speed can be a little bit annoying, but it is definitely worth it for that 35% splash damage, and for the ability to have the option of going into cryo damage for our attuned element. But yeah, that's gonna about do it for, again, what is still currently Golden Shower Amara, but I'm sure that will change. It is a very fun build, and it's a build that I've been running for quite some time now, and has made me genuinely believe that the Golden Rule is probably up there as one of Amara's best class mods, simply due to the fact that most of Amara's class mods just provide a lot of gun damage, but her anointments also can. The Golden Rule is unique in providing action still cooldown, which is very important for Amara, alongside a very nice multiplicative bonus, enabling her to use other sources of weapon damage far better than she otherwise could. So I would definitely recommend keeping the Golden Rule in the back of your mind when you're thinking up new Amara builds. But that's gonna about do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, definitely consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, all of that. I will be live right after this video goes up, right here on YouTube, but if you would prefer, there's also a link in the description to my Twitch channel, and just below that is a link to my Discord server where you can come and join and hang out. But with that all being said, I hope to see you guys in the next one.